We're following breaking news right now. 3 Israeli hostages released today as the long-awaited ceasefire in the Gaza Strip is now in effect. The truce prompting celebrations in Gaza, relief for families of the Israeli captives, and hope for an end to the devastating 15-month war. The freed hostages have been identified as Romi Gonen, Emily Damari, and Duran Steinbrecher. In exchange, Israel will release 90 Palestinian prisoners. Joining us now to talk more is civil rights attorney Brooke Goldstein. She's also the executive director of the Lawfare Project and founder of EndJewHatred.com. Brooke, appreciate your time today.
Thank you for having me.
First, your reaction to what's been unfolding.
Well, the reactions are mixed. I have to say, I'm here in D.C. right now, and I'm feeling all of the excitement of the Trump inauguration coming. And at the same time, we're watching this footage of the hostages, the 3 women coming home. But at the same time, we understand the massive price that Israel is paying for these hostages. What is really disturbing, however, are the celebrations happening, not just in Gaza, but also in Jerusalem, in the West Bank, where you have Palestinians who are waving the Hamas flag, celebrating as though this is some sort of victory for terrorism. And in essence, really, they're right, because one of Hamas's goals when they carried out October the 7th, aside from obviously massacring as many innocent people as they can, over 40 Americans were killed during the attack, was to take hostages in order for their prisoners to be released. And it seems as though they are achieving those goals. Well, on the other hand, Israel's goals is for the annihilation of the Hamas terrorist group and the demilitarization of Gaza. And what we're seeing as part of the deal right now really is the reconstitution of the Hamas terrorist group, the resupplying of the terrorist group, the delivering of food and supplies and gas, which unfortunately, even though we have a temporary ceasefire right now, really guarantees for this war to continue.
It's important to share all sides of the story, so I'm glad that you brought that up. In fact, one of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's far-right cabinet members actually resigned over all this, saying he thinks it's actually a bad deal, and part of the reason is that he sees an opening for Hamas to be able to remain there in Gaza. What do you think about that?
So there's an incredible amount of division, not just within Israel, but frankly, within the Western world in terms of how we deal with terrorism and hostages. This is a technique that's used all the time by by terrorist groups. And the more that we feed into it and we trade for hostages, the more they're encouraged to continue this. Now, a lot of people have also been talking about why isn't the death penalty given when you catch a terrorist who committed a horrible attack that murdered civilians, who is tried and convicted in a court of law. They should receive the death penalty, and that obviously would get rid of the whole prisoner for hostage exchange issue. Also, we're talking about this as though it's some sort of deal when really it's an extortion. Alan Dershowitz released a statement yesterday saying that there's no deal with terrorist groups. It's actually unlikely that Hamas is going to adhere to the ceasefire. And we've seen the Trump administration and also Biden say repeatedly that if it's broken, then Israel will have no choice but to go back in. It's really an extortion, and that's what we're playing into right now.
And Brooke, some have said that the semantics really matter, and even calling it a hostage release instead of, a swap is, something that needs to be underscored there. But this video, I just want to pause for a moment. I'm not sure if you can see what's on your screen, but these families are getting reunited with their loved ones. These 3 women, 2 of them were just ripped away from their homes, their kibbutzes, the other from a peaceful music festival, and they've been held for much of the time, we believe, underground in terrible conditions since October 7th, 2023, and they are now with their families. Can you talk about just the emotion that you think they're experiencing?
I can only imagine. You mentioned the conditions that these hostages are held in. I heard and had the privilege of meeting Noah Argamani just the other day, who described how she was kept in a room with no windows, no access to fresh air, no water, no bathroom, no shower, basically tortured on a daily basis. And what are we swapping? We're swapping innocent young women for murderers who have killed and raped and murdered and behead women. We are supposed supposed to be swapping infants, babies who were kidnapped for baby killers, people like Zachariah Zubeidi, who I interviewed 9 years ago for my film, The Making of a Martyr, who's responsible for murdering Palestinian children that he sent out on suicide, homicide attacks, often blowing them up by remote control to prevent these children from giving themselves up. So it really goes to show the contrast in values between the two societies, where you have the Israeli population and the IDF that is willing to put itself at further risk just to release these hostages, versus a society that is celebrating and vowing to continue to commit October 7th style terrorist attacks over and over again.
We're just seeing these tears of joy and these embraces, and they're looking at one another's faces almost like, I didn't know if I was ever going to see you again. It's so beautiful to see them reunited there. But there is a lot of fear that this deal is not going to hold. What do you think the likelihood is that all three phases are not carried out?
Well, obviously, I'm hoping that they will be carried out. But the unfortunate truth, as I mentioned before, is that Hamas has never adhered to a ceasefire deal. And there really is no deal with terrorist groups. The future is incredibly unpredictable. Even just a couple hours before the ceasefire was scheduled to take into effect, Hamas was already breaking the deal. They wouldn't let Israel know who was being released, what the conditions